Okay, so this video is part 3 discussing beautiful women should avoid working for low-level regular 9-to-5 jobs. I've already discussed why beautiful women should not apply to regular low-level 9-to-5 jobs. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about barriers to entry. Now, another reason why I recommend beautiful women to pursue high-level education, like become a nurse practitioner, become a registered health information technician like me. I'm a registered health information technician, and I'm a medical coder. Become a medical coder. Become a lawyer, become an MRI technologist, become a physician assistant. For those careers, there are barriers to entry to become a physician assistant. You have to go to college. You have to have money to afford, the education, to become a physician assistant, to get a college degree. Those are barriers to entry. Not everybody can afford college. Well, when you apply for a regular job, such as McDonald's, there's no barriers to entry. You don't need to submit a resume or a cover letter. You don't even really need to have experience. So a beautiful woman working a regular 9-to-5 job, because there's hardly no barriers to entry to work for a regular 9-to-5 job, what kind of people do you think are going to be working on those jobs? If there's no barriers to entry, for example, medical coding. To become a medical coder, although it does not require you to get a college degree, all you need is formal training. You need really good training, and you need a certification, whether it's the CCSP certification, the CPC, the COC, the CIC. You need a medical coding certification. You need training. You can self-study. That's a cheap way to become a medical coder. Independently study. You don't have to attend, take a course or anything, or go to a community college to become a medical coder. You do need to know medical terminology. You need to know how to code. You need to know anatomy and physiology. And also, most employers require you to have at least 1 to 5 years of experience. Most employers require you to have experience, and then even before they hire you on, they require you to sit for their pre-assessments, because they want to know, anybody can put on their professional resume that they are a medical coder and they have 5 years of medical coding experience, just so that they can, get an interview. Anybody can say that. But that's the reason why most employers, hiring for medical coders, they require you to sit for that coding pre-assessment. They want to know, what your skills are. Do you actually know medical coding? And you have to pass it. If you fail it, they're not going to hire you on. That is a barrier to entry. The fact that you have to sit for a pre-assessment, before you are hired on, you have to pass it. That's a barrier to entry. You have to be certified. That's a barrier to entry. You have to have experience. That is a barrier to entry for medical coding. So what I'm trying to say here is that that's the reason, one of the biggest reasons why I recommend, if you are an attractive woman, to pursue high-level education, because there are barriers to entry. You have to have a college degree. You have to have experience. To even get the degree, you have to pay for it. Most people don't have money, for physician assistant school, for registered nursing school. You know, there are barriers to entry. You have to have money, you have to have experience, you have to have knowledge. Most people do not have experience, they don't have money, they don't have knowledge. Whereas these regular 9 to 5 jobs, they don't require you to submit a resume, they don't require you to have work experience, they don't require you, all they really require, you know, is for you to have a high school diploma or a GED. That is somewhat of a barrier to entry, but the higher you go, you know, in your education, there's going to be more barriers to entry. Yes, high level careers like physician assistant jobs, they require you to have a high school diploma and a GED, but they also require you to have experience. They also require you to have, not all employers require you to have experience, but they require you to have a high school diploma, a GED. They require you to be licensed. Okay? Those are barriers to entry. So what I'm trying to say here is that these low level positions, the more barriers to entry, I mean, the higher you go in your education, there will be barriers to entry, making it harder for people to get those kind of jobs. Even physician assistant school, it's hard to get into those programs. You have to be very smart. You can't even work a full-time job. You can, but because the program is so rigorous and, you know, there's a lot of classes you have to take, it's best not to work. So a lot of these, you know, schools are hard to get into. You have to have your certain GPA. So that's a barrier to entry. These regular 9 to 5 jobs, there are not a whole lot of barriers to entry. All you need is a high school diploma and a GED. Most people have a high school diploma and a GED. So these regular 9 to 5 jobs are easy to get. Whereas becoming a medical coder, oh no, those jobs are not easy to get. You have to have experience. You can get that experience, you know, by becoming, you know, there's jobs that you can work that are entry level that can expose you to the medical codes, and that will count as experience. I'm not going to get into that, but there are more barriers to entry with high level careers like registered nursing, physician assistant, MRI tech. You know, there are hardly any barriers to entry to work for low level jobs. So the kind of people working those kind of jobs are going to be people who are low value, toxic people. Those jobs are easy to get. So the kind of people working on those jobs are going to be narcissists, people who are insecure, people who don't have nothing going for themselves, people who are lazy, you know, people who just don't want to put in the work. People who are not going to be aligned with you are going to be working those kind of jobs. Those jobs are easy to get, but they're hard to work for because of the kind of toxic people working on those jobs. So I hope that I made sense. It makes sense to me. So thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in my next upload.